Well, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you all to our Leading in a Volatile, Uncertain, Complex, and Ambiguous World, otherwise known as VUCA. This is our live webinar today. We're pleased to be with you. My name is Christy McGuire, and I am the Business Solutions Director at Workplace Options. We have a great team of expert panelists today, and we will be discussing topics related to operating and leading in a VUCA world. We will have time throughout this webinar to answer your questions, so I do encourage you to send us any questions that you have in the questions box on your screen. Please note that a copy of the Workplace Options Manager Guide is available for you throughout the handout section that you see in the panel of your screen and can be downloaded at any time throughout the session. So we're so very excited to get started today, but before we begin, I would like to introduce our panelists. First, I'd like to invite Alan King, President and CEO of Workplace Options, to give the opening remarks. Thanks for joining us, Alan.
Great. Thank you, Christy, and thank you to all of our panelists for joining today and for you for attending. On behalf of my colleagues at WPO, I'd like to also welcome you to this discussion of leading in a VUCA world. While we are all still joining this event virtually, we're doing so in an environment that is optimistically focused on a return to the real world, or at least something that feels vaguely familiar. What we have experienced the last year plus is more than just the impact of a wayward virus. It's the shattering of a myth of invincibility and exceptionalism. Things like this happen in other places. They don't happen here. COVID has taught us the opposite, that the improbable, no matter how unlikely, is not impossible. That ensuing unease, the lingering feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, is at the heart of today's discussion, a discussion that is entitled Leading in a Post-COVID World, because we know that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are our new normal. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for joining us today and hope you'll find our conversation to be enlightening and helpful. Christy, back to you.
Thank you, Alan. I would now like to introduce our panelists. Today we have with us Shannon Lorance, Director of Clinical Service Delivery at Workplace Options. Shannon is a licensed clinical social worker and is based in Raleigh, North Carolina. She has over 25 years experience working with individuals and families as an agent of support and guidance in diverse professional settings. Thank you for joining us, Shannon. Also joining us today from KBR, we have Bethany Spurrier. Bethany has over 20 years of experience as a global benefits executive, ensuring benefits align with company objectives. At KBR, Bethany leads the planning, organization, and implementation of benefits programs. Her track record includes generating savings while maintaining or improving benefits and related programs. Thanks for joining us, Bethany. Finally, I'd also very excited to introduce Courtney Lagasse from Colgate-Palmolive. Courtney joined Colgate-Palmolive in 2019 to lead global employee well-being. She has over 15 years of experience working in the employee health and well-being space. Courtney holds a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and an MBA from NYU Stern. So welcome, everybody. I'd like to start off with some statistics today that you might find interesting. According to the Center for Disease Control, as of today, the total number of individuals who have been fully vaccinated in the US are 146.5 million people. However, it's estimated that 1 in 5 Americans will choose not to get the COVID-19 vaccine. I know that this causes a lot of anxiety in the workplace for people coming back to work, whether or not they should wear a mask if they haven't been vaccinated. And also, now that they're not vaccinated, they don't have to wear a mask. So I know there's some confusion and anxiety around the workforce. So Bethany, I'd like to turn to you first. How can organizations address employee anxiety in regards to COVID-19 vaccinations, especially when you get a mix of those individuals who have received the vaccines and others who have not?
So KBR, I'm excited to tell you, started a committee, and it's a well-diverse committee across all of the corporate departments right when the pandemic started. And we have been not only watching the pandemic, but looking at when do you return to work. Some people never left work because we are largely a government service organization. So we provide work to government entities and other companies as well. So there was a lot of things that we had to consider when the pandemic hit. Of course, we have a lot of people that were working from home, and now we're looking at whether or not we come back. In this committee environment, we were looking across the nation and quite honestly across the globe as to what we wanted to do. One of the other things that our company established early on was a committee associated with mental health and wellness. That committee is a global committee, and it is a corporate KBR committee that has engaged Workplace Options to help us both in the manager arena and the employee arena as a resource, because what the pandemic has brought is not just with mental health. There are so many things that impact whether or not people return to work and the anxiety associated with that, whether it's the mask, are my kids still at home? Do I have an elderly parent that I was taking care of? Perhaps I've moved or relocated to a different location. In my department, I have people that live 2 or 3 hours away, and they are very, very successful right now. So do they need to drive the 2 hours in? Maybe, maybe not. So KBR has been looking at this for a long time and looking at how we're going to implement that. The mask is certainly one of them, and I think that staying within the U.S., not only with the EEOC or OSHA, but ABA and HIPAA, and making sure that you're addressing just common sense needs. You don't want people to feel uncomfortable if they wear the mask or don't wear the mask, making sure people don't say the right thing, the wrong thing, whatever. So we've had a lot of helpful results there with Workplace Options and these committees that we've set up.
Bethany, at Colgate, one of the things that came up was regarding the conversation around mask wearing, and that there will be a difference in the office when we go back. And one of the things that we were looking at is what is behind the mask campaign, because people could still be wearing a mask for their own thoughts and reasons. And so that's something that we're looking at is really kind of understanding to say that wearing a mask is all right, and it may not mean that you're vaccinated or the reason why you're not. So that is something we're incorporating. And the other piece around this is we have a vaccine hesitancy focus group of really understanding what is the vaccine, debunking myths and facts are really been a focus for us. As new information is released, we do our best to have Q&A sessions to address those issues as they come up, do podcasts. We actually had a webinar this morning where we brought physicians on to talk about the new regulations that have been released and where we're at. And so our hope by doing that is that it starts conversations not only at the company level, but allows for that conversation to come back to the family as well as people make decisions. So we're looking at taking it in that direction and kind of making it part of a larger conversation, but it's definitely a newer place for us as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that the conversation that you're talking about there, Courtney, is the most important key here. And that is something that we're really trying to focus on here at Workplace Options, is also just being very transparent with our team. We did provide a culture amp survey to our team just for them to be able to kind of discuss some of the anxieties and some of the things that they're dealing with. Also just letting people know all of the safety measures that we are putting into place in our offices globally. As well as creating a work group, a committee to be able to take all of those concerns that our employees are expressing and try to help resolve in those areas. And being transparent also means that we have a monthly town hall where we discuss all of the changes that we're making, all of the safety precautions we're putting into place, and also just letting people know that we hear them. We also created a vaccination clinic here in Raleigh for our employees and their families, because we knew that was a big concern as well. Maybe an employee might be able to get the vaccination, but what about their families? And just really trying to let people know that, you know, their safety is a priority, and whatever choice they make, we want to make sure that we have the best safety precautions in place to be able to feel safe.
Thank you all. I know being prepared and being transparent is obviously two of the key factors here. And so employees know when they come back to work, they feel confident in their employer that they're providing them with the culture and the resources available to really help them feel comfortable and come back to work and be productive. So thank you. Microsoft recently released a work trend index report for 2021. It's titled "The Next Great Disruption is Hybrid Work. Are we ready?" One of the hybrid work trends they highlight is that flexible work is actually here to stay. In that report, they mentioned that 73% of workers surveyed want flexible remote work options, and 67% are after more in-person time with their teams. To address this, 66% of leaders are redesigning physical space to better accommodate hybrid work environments. Another survey conducted in March of this year and recently released by Littler Mendelson found that 71% of over 1,100 executives surveyed prefer a hybrid model over full-time in-person work. So a lot of different statistics and a lot of different ways that people are kind of looking at this. Bethany, a hybrid work model seems to be the way forward, but what are going to be the challenges for managers and the workforce to operate in this non-traditional type of working model, like a hybrid model?
Well, KBR has made a concerted effort to be what we're terming an agile workforce globally, not just in the US. And there are a lot of different questions you have to ask. And I do believe that it's a collaborative group that needs to resolve the issues. The issues are not unresolvable. You just need to cover all of them, whether it's taxes or location or payroll, a lot of different things to look at, but also how are you going to keep people engaged? And a few examples I have that we have learned over the past year, you had to keep people engaged anyway. We've been living it, right? So some of the things that we have done as a company is to allow managers to have some input on whether or not we're going to be at work or not at work. If we're going to be at work, is it 5 days a week or not? Now, again, our customers are going to drive a large part of this depending upon where the employee is working. But for those managers that they can help make a decision. As I mentioned earlier, some of the people in my own department live a long way away, and we have weekly meetings on Teams that we see each other. We have one-on-one meetings with me each week. And then the other things that I like to do every now and then, if we are feeling kind of low or we've just finished a good project, or even if it took a lot of work and it just was something I think is important, not that everything isn't important, by the way, I have sent little things to their house. There was a person in Houston, which is where I sit, that lost her job, and she started a cookie business. And so I ordered the cookies to see if they were good, and they were delicious. So I ordered each one of my departments some cookies and had them sent to their house. So any little thing that you can think of like that, just to say thank you, I think is important. And it was a surprise. I didn't put my name on it, and they figured it out because I was always the one who brought stuff into the office. We're not in the office. So what can you do? Another example is go online and get the gifts that move and say you rock, or say thank you. It's more of an effort for a manager to do things like that, or a coworker, just to remind people. So making that extra effort because you're not there in the office. But I do think agile workforce is the way of the world. I think people expect that. I don't know. Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, so and we have made the announcement that we are going to be and again at Colgate we have manufacturing plant locations in the US along with more of an office setting. And so those that have been working remote throughout the pandemic, we have said we're going to move to a hybrid model. We are going to look for people to still come into the office 3 days a week, work from home 2 days. And so with that announcement, it's a new routine for our population that's been at home for over 400 days. I think somebody quoted me the exact days that they've been home recently. And with that, so we're really looking at what are those things that we can do to help with this transition. And so one of the areas that we're really focused on is kind of working conditions. And it sounds kind of very technical, but our thought around it is, what are those initial thoughts that go through your mind that you're going to have a new routine, and things that come up to kind of give you that immediate sense of security and control. So things like addressing right away, can I keep the screen that I brought home? What time can I now go pick up my daughter at school? She's so used to me picking her up at school now that I've been home. So things like that we want to address up front. And then the areas that we don't know really yet, right? Because this is going to be new for us as a new way of working. And one of the things that we're doing is sending out a survey, very conversational, not asking really what people are looking for, but really actually asking kind of, how anxious are you? What would be your ideal start time if you had to come in? Just kind of getting them to start thinking in a different way. So hopefully that will allow for us to figure out ways to support our people in ways that matter to them. And then we're also hosting a pilot. So we're going to be bringing people back to the office to understand what that will look and feel like, get real people to who have all been vaccinated. That was a requirement for the pilot, but really that is to allow for us in real time have an understanding about what this will look like. And they will be doing the hybrid model, 3 days a week in the office, picking and 2 days out. So more to come on that, but we are looking at the September timeframe to kind of move in that direction and use the summer to really make sure we're building that support.
Courtney, let me ask you really quickly, what do you feel is appropriate for this new model in terms of kind of setting actual days that employees need to come in, or letting them choose their own days? And could it fluctuate week by week?
It's a very good question. I think what we're exploring, there hasn't been anything set. I think the pilot's going to help us solidify what that will be. We have communicated that it will be 3 days that you're expected in the office. What our thought is, maybe 2 of those days will be the same for the full population, to try to allow to make sure there is that interaction, and then having the employee base pick 1 day a week to kind of balance that. So it's something we're thinking about to ensure when people are in place, they're not just sitting at their desk or their normal setup and then still doing a Zoom call with their colleagues who didn't come in that day. So we're still figuring it out, but that's kind of what we're thinking about right now going into the pilot.
Christy,
No,
one
thank
of
you.
the things,
Yeah, go ahead, Bethany.
one of the things I was going to say is, in our revamp of our building, one of the things that we did was incorporate more conference room area and larger conference rooms. And we have a quarterly meeting with our vice president where all of her department gets together. And that's one of the things that we have openly agreed that we think is important, that we will get together for that quarterly meeting at a minimum. And then for big projects, that allows us a space to come together and collaborate. So I do think that it's still important face to face, like what Courtney was saying. It's just we are doing a little different take on the agile workforce, but we are not going to forever not be in the office. It's just going to be a little more selective, more in the group setting.
I think that's excellent, because I do think in terms of employee well-being, there's a lot of times where childcare can become an issue, or elder care can become an issue, and still there's some uncertainty about vaccines and young children in the schools and how all that's going to look. So at least knowing that somebody may have a couple days at home for work and a couple days in the office gives them that flexibility to be able to accommodate some of their needs that they may have. Shannon, would you mind adding some flavor in terms of workplace options, in terms of the hybrid work model?
Yes, of course. So we are definitely going to be having a hybrid work model as well in September. And this is based on the feedback that we received from our employees. When we first went into COVID, well, I shouldn't say, when the pandemic first started and we started working from home fully remote, we definitely had a lot of resistance at that moment, because people were not used to working at home. And now that we've been doing it for 1.5 years, we've kind of become experts at it. So now we're getting resistance a little bit of people wanting to come back full time. So we are going to be implementing the hybrid model, a couple of days in the office and a couple of days still working from home. We do know that there's going to be some struggles as people go in, because not everything is open and it's based on the state and the country that you're in. So some employees are still going to be struggling with maybe daycare and that sort of thing. So we want to make sure that we utilize our own internal resources for that. I also feel like there's also the issue with COVID nostalgia and people sort of feeling, I'm so sorry, and people just feeling like there is a lot of missing of being in the safety bubble of home and being with their families every single day. So there's going to be a little bit of that we're going to have to deal with as well.
Thank you, Shannon. Courtney or Bethany, I think back to you in terms of what I mentioned before, just the uncertainty of childcare, elder care support that may pop up throughout the year as things may change. What are you doing within your organization to help employees in regards to that?
Well, we've been very focused on workplace options, and there's another app that we have added called MEQ. It's short for Equilibrium. Because, as I said earlier, the challenges are very robust. We have all ages of people, and it really doesn't matter about the age. Your own personal situation is going to vary. So we have found through workplace options that they have the counselors, they have finance, they have caregiving. There's even pets that need help. So everybody has something that they need, and that has been available. And from our CEO and our CHRO, we have had personal recommendations and support to use those tools that they have made available globally for everybody. It's just real important that we provide that. As I mentioned, we have the committee, and now we have the global support of those two things. And there is a vision series that our CHRO puts out periodically, speaking with other business leaders. And as I mentioned, our CEO has done a couple of series where he's mentioned those. The whole point is getting tools out to tell people what is going on, and getting managers not to have managers help the people because they're not comfortable with that. People who don't work in benefits or HR are not always comfortable directing people. So our goal in benefits was to get something that we could direct people to that was more than just quote unquote counseling. It was everything that could come up in the pandemic, because the pandemic accentuated all the other things that have been there all along. When there were fires in California, we had workplace options had a place where our people called and they got them immediately where they needed to be, a place to spend the night. When the hurricanes hit and we had something over here, if they had a debt that was due, then that was something. So there are many things that can create angst around the pandemic, but it becomes exacerbated due to the situation. So we found that to be very successful for us.
And on our side, we've been in a situation where we have half of our workforce that's been working and going into the workplace through the whole pandemic. And then we have, as we're talking about today, those that have been working from home. And so one of the things we're looking at doing this summer, and it would be applicable to all employees in the US. So approach we're taking right now, we know there's gonna be some site-specific support. But what we're understanding is caregiving, new pets, new babies, just new routines, is that we've always had some really awesome vendor partners that have been in place, but maybe people didn't need those services for the last year. And so we're going to be hosting webinar series with each of those providers that everyone, no matter if you've been in the workplace or you've been working from home, and really kind of doing that and educating everyone on what is available to them, and then publishing that up front so you can find out, yep, I'm now a pet owner, I'm going to attend the one about taking care of pets. I have a new baby, I'll attend that one. So we're really looking at that and then making it open to the family members as well. So that is for sure a way we're looking to address that and really lean, as you said, Bethany, on those partners that have always been there. We're just going to be engaging with them probably in a new way. So.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Shannon.
Those are all really great ideas. And I do think that there is going to be, we are also, just like you all, just reintroducing our employees to some of the services that are available and information that's going to hopefully make the transition a little bit easier. We also have employees that have never been to our offices. So we're going to be hosting houses for people to come in and look at the space, meet other members of their team, meet their team lead supervisors, and then just be able to take a tour of our different buildings that we have, and take a tour of our wellness center and our just all the different areas that are available, and just to kind of get a reintroduction to the services that are available to them. So I think that's important as well.
Thank you for all of those fantastic responses. It's amazing how something like this pandemic has really changed the whole workplace and has really made companies rethink strategies and how they communicate to their employees and really build that atmosphere within the organization that creates that culture of well-being and that open door for support. I'd like to turn it over to our audience briefly. I'd like to take a little poll. On your screen, you will see some poll questions pop up, and we'd like for you just to to click on one of the circles to select your answer. The question is, which work model is your organization planning to implement? Is it a hybrid model, a combination of work from home and in-office work? Is it a work from home on a permanent basis? Work from home, work in the office on a permanent basis, or yet it has yet been to be determined as to what model you're going to be moving forward with? Excellent, and we'll share those results here shortly. Actually, we have 72% selected a hybrid model where they'll have half in the office, half out. We had 3% work from home on a permanent basis. Over 9% of attendees work in the office on a permanent basis, and then 16% have yet to be determined. So still a lot of questions out there. I think companies still trying to think what's going to be the best fit for them. So thank you for selecting your results. You know, given all this uncertainty about hybrid work models and companies having to restructure, I think, you know, Bethany, you touched on this a little bit earlier about managers themselves being able to, you know, lead and not sacrifice their own mental health and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing at KBR to support your managers from that perspective?
We have had some manager training. I spoke a little bit about the Mental Health and Wellness Committee has done an excellent job of rolling out. I sound like a workplace option ad. I know that, but you guys really have supported us in a lot of what we needed. And that was manager training that we've been rolling out to help the managers with tools that are out there for their employees. There has been a want to make sure that people are getting what they want. In crisis situations where we've needed people on the ground, and I can tell you we had an individual in a disability situation that wasn't working, and I just heard yesterday that you all came through in 24 hours and got exactly what was needed. It's excellent. Those things, as well as managers who just need a little bit of help of how do I pull people together? Because their job is to get the job done. It's not to sometimes do the touchy-feely or to recognize something before it happens. And so it's trying to help those managers with what they need to recognize, whether they're on location at a customer or they're at home and they're doing at home and in the office. And what most of us talked about is I've been working at home for a year and a half, and now I have to leave whatever is at home that they're used to having for a year and a half. So that's been real critical in getting them support there. There is also the MECU app that we were using, is fairly new to roll out, and that is to help a manager. It doesn't go by employee, but it does share within a group of at least 20 the resilience, which is a little different than your psyche. It's the resilience that you are having within a group of people. And it will tell you within a heat map or other applications what's going on within your group. And then it gives you suggestions as to what you can offer up to your group. Like I said, it's not by person, but it is, and it is an AI. There's no person connected to it. But it too is another resource for the manager to shoot things out to people. So those are two big things that we've rolled out globally, I should say. In addition to, HR is always there and rolling out things and asking for meetings and things of that nature. These are the two kind of off the wall things. We call MECU a Fitbit for the mind. And then we have workplace options where we're trying to do the training and some of those for resources.
And Bethany, KBR is a very well-established organization, and you work in some very high-risk, remote areas around the world, and do some high-risk work in the U.S. as well. So I imagine, do you find that it's beneficial for organizations to be proactive with their managers and provide all of the resources up front, so when there is an emergency and there is a situation that arises, they know how to be an advocate to their team as well as themselves?
Absolutely. I told you that we have a pandemic committee. Our HSSE group and our leaders are very into that. And we have a cross-functional team on several committees that are paying attention to threat assessment or pandemic or whatever you want to talk about in preparation for what do we have available in our toolkit should something arise that we need. So yeah, very big on that. So we're always looking for out of the box ideas. And, if anybody has one, please call me. So anyway, yes, we're always looking for out of the box ideas. And so far, those two have been really, really good.
Perfect. Courtney?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Bethany, you said it so well. Managers are there to run the business, support their teams. Get the job done in a sense of making sure their team is coming together for that. And so one of the ways that we looked at this was, what can we do from top down? What are the things that we can just make the default so that the manager doesn't have to then, implement another potential policy or trying to support people on an individual basis? And so we had a couple of ways that we are looking at doing this. Some will to come, but then also ones that we have done. One of the ways that we're looking at this is we did in the US where we made it where there was Wellness Fridays. So every other Friday, not for, working a longer week or anything, but everyone actually got the afternoon off starting at 1. And we put on everyone's calendar the time blocked off that said Wellness Fridays. And this is the time for you, and to kind of reset, which I think was beneficial. Other things we're looking at is coming up with what we're looking at as golden rules. The meetings, we use Google tools. So there's capabilities to default your meetings to be only 25 to 50 minutes. So having everyone default that, so different things like that we're trying to embed into the actual way people engage with their managers and their teams, so the manager doesn't have to be implementing that just for their team itself. The other thing we realize is that they are on the front lines. They are the ones, especially in a virtual setting, that are really, seeing their team or employees or their colleagues, where maybe others, if you don't have a meeting, you're not seeing that person walk down the hall. And so we realized that there was an important role there, that they may be seeing things and may need to have those difficult conversations that of checking in and seeing how people are doing. And so we did roll out mental health awareness trainings geared towards managers, really looking at self-care for themselves, but also how to open up that conversation with, then, as you talked about, Bethany, some resources they can just quickly go to and make sure that they are able to offer up kind of more of a assess and then kind of hand off, right? It's what our view was. And so this is ongoing that we're looking at, but really that is kind of the approach. What can we take off their plate and make a default that we're doing as a company overall?
I think that's really impressive. I think everybody always worries about burnout. And I know managers, even during this pandemic, with everything being remote and, whether you're in a manufacturing plant having to go to work or at home, and, behind your desk on Zoom all day and worrying about your employees and wondering why they're not on the call or why they're not showing up for work, and they're picking up the extra work themselves. And so I know there's a lot of that. So it's great to hear that you're being super proactive in supporting your managers and providing those extra resources to shut off and limit the time during certain meetings and things. Thank you. Shannon, would you be able to provide your perspective as well?
Yes, of course. So we have a couple of things in place to support our managers while they're supporting their teams. And I think that one of the most utilized tool is our managers toolkit that we have on our Yammer page that we like to utilize, which gives nice little tips and ways to speak to your staff in regard to different concerns that they may be having. We also have a leadership exchange page as well, where people in our management department can talk about some of their successes of their teams and share those, but then also talk about some of the concerns that they may be experiencing and really solicit a dialogue to be able to try to figure out how best to maybe deal with the situation or try to get new ideas, like Bethany was talking about, always open to new ideas. And just be able to see how they can support their teams in a better way, especially as, even though we've been in this pandemic for, over a year, there are still some concerns that we're dealing with in regard to that, especially as people are moving and making changes, coming back into the office and that sort of thing. And then there's maybe their children going back into schools and us just all going into the community as a whole. So we do have some of these little tools that we utilize. We also bring in guest speakers, subject matter experts to kind of talk to us as well about working in a flexible work environment and just different types of trainings that we have for our managers. And then not only that, we also just really try to have a little bit more team meetings, do a little bit more fun. One of the things that we like to focus on is having fun in some of our meetings as well, just doing some extra icebreakers, just doing different things to keep our managers engaged as well, and also realize that just because they're managers in a leadership position doesn't mean that they don't need the support as well. And just remembering that, sometimes I think they feel a little bit overlooked sometimes, and we just want to make sure that we focus on giving them the support that they need as well. So.
Thank you, Shannon. I do like the icebreakers. I think they always work in traditional settings. It really helps to get people involved and laugh and actually realize what life is all about. So thank you. Bethany, actually back to you. We did have a couple questions come in. The first one is, could you please tell us again the name of that app you mentioned, how it's been helpful for KBR one more time, and how it works?
The name is Mequilibrium, and it took me a long time to figure out how to say that. It's Mequilibrium. That's what we call it, MEQ. It is a resilience app. So basically what happens is the employee goes on and registers and then goes through, believe it or not, 92 questions, but they do it. And that gives you your 5 core values, basically, that you have as a person. And it gives you things to work on. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And gives you some ways to work on that. And as you work through, there's a little, a cup of calm you can get every morning. If you have anxiety before you go into a meeting, you can actually schedule on your calendar a 30-second breathing exercise. So it helps you in both the work environment and the home environment. There's just a lot that's available if you use the app, but it's working on your resilience to handle situations both at work and away from home, away from work. So if you're interested, I would either contact me directly and I can tell you more, or contact them. I can get you the information. Happy to do that. And we work in combination. They connect up with all of the vendors. So happy to tell you about that. That was new for me this year too. That was an out of the box thing I had not seen. So we added that in January 1. So we are still rolling it out, but it does have manager reporting. It's based off the hierarchy. So it's pretty slick. It's pretty slick. Give me a holler.
Really Thank you, Bethany. That's very interesting. I think that's the big factor, is how can people learn to cope with when things come up. And so,
that's exactly
having
what it was on the resilience.
Yeah, having access to something like that is really great and impressive. Directed to everybody, I guess, starting with Bethany, a question came in around, are there any cybersecurity best practices that your organization is putting in place?
Oh my goodness, cybersecurity, we're all about that. We're government services industry. So I can't tell you what all goes on, but I'm sure it does. From a benefits perspective, you know that there's a lot around 401k. The regulations have just been going on. So we are doing some additional checks and balances from a 401k perspective. We have a particular way. I'm kind of a compliance monger. I'm a weird benefits person, been in weird situations. So I tend to come at things with a compliance eye first. And I will tell you that I go at it like, what happens if? So work with others, work with your lawyers, work with your vendors, and make sure that you are securing information. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. But yes, you need to be secure, even within your own company. And I think that's the other thing that gets people is that sometimes we forget that things should not leave the benefits arena, even to HR. So know your fiduciary liability and your fiduciary requirements. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Thank you. No, that's fantastic. Courtney, did you want to mention anything in regards to that? I have another question for you as well.
I think actually Bethany answered it well. I love the idea that you shared regarding what happens if. So definitely, I think this is, of course, something, especially when we look at new things we're implementing this year. There's a lot of new vendors, a lot of new players in different spaces, whether even back to the supporting, as we have been going into the workplace, different apps that you can use to self-verify that you haven't come into contact. And so implementing that and different ways to expand services. So especially in a virtual world, it's a lot easier to send, a quick email, right? So those are the things we're looking at. The other thing that we are trying to understand is the regulations around asking your colleagues whether or not you've been vaccinated. I think that's something that's coming up for us. And just, how are we going to make sure those conversations are happening in the appropriate way? Can a manager ask? No. So things of that sort, we're really kind of understanding and figuring out what policies need to be in place to manage that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about people asking everybody if they've been vaccinated. Courtney, one question directed to you. Can you expand on the mental health training provided to managers? How did you implement? Was it voluntary or mandatory? And how was the reaction of the managers? And what was the particular aspect of it? Was it successful or did they like it?
This was something that was surprising to us because it was one of the first times that we really used the word mental health. It was literally called mental health awareness training. We went for it, and it was global. It was offered in English, and we partnered with a company called Oakwood Trainings that's out of the UK. And the way we found them was actually our Northern Europe team had worked with them on some local trainings more involved, and we thought they just really said it resonated. And so we thought, let's go for it. And so we took a version of what they had, globalized it, meaning making it try to be as applicable as you can to a global audience. And we offered multiple sessions. We offered about 8 different sessions at different times. Half were geared towards all employees, so managers or employees, and then there were specific ones designed just for the manager relationship. Obviously, there were some synergies in the topics, but what was really great about the way the training was done was we did hold it to an hour, which was tough. But what they did was leveraging the virtual environment, had breakout rooms and had open discussion. And one of the pieces of feedback we got was, I didn't think with 200 people on the line, it would feel so intimate. And what happened was there was a dialogue started and people started to talk and really work with each other and share stories. So it was something that we rolled out, kind of a lot of sessions, same topic, and we really were surprised by the number of people that attended and then the conversations that happened afterwards. So we're actually looking at doing what we're considering 2.0, kind of this was our 101, and then now having longer sessions with managers so that they can dive in with smaller groups, and that's something we're looking to roll out this summer. So very, as well as Bethany said, happy to share information and more specifics as well. Please do not hesitate to reach out.
That's fantastic. And Bethany, I know at KBR you established a kind of a 2-day training program for your managers, and you did a needs analysis specific to local countries to understand the cultures and what the managers were dealing in each country around the globe. Do you want to just speak briefly to that? It's been successful.
Sure, we've had really good participation. We set it up. I think it's 2 meetings a day on the days in which we offer it. We're rolling it out now. It's been a couple of months, and so we'll see whether or not we need to modify it. The way that KBR rolls out things, and it's actually pretty good for us, is we come up with ideas. Workplace Options, again, helped us with this, and The training is established. It was shown to our executive leadership to make sure from the top down that it was going to be accepted. It too was based off the mental health and well-being and how you're going to take care of issues. Eventually, we are rolling out what we call ambassadors that will also be available per country. That's not completely rolled out yet based off different country requirements. But anyway, managers are still there and need help. And the participation's been pretty good. And it helps you with the tools, again, that are out there and available. We've gone through 3 months, I think it is. And so now we'll evaluate what that is and whether or not it needs to be tweaked a little bit and rolled again. But the point is there's help. I think people do want help. Courtney, you probably would agree with that. People want the help. And they just are a little nervous when you say that mental thing, or I've got to go do something other than what you pay me to do, you know? So it's interesting. It's been well received. I would agree with Courtney.
Thank you. Courtney, one other question directed to you that came in is in regards to Wellness Fridays. How do you convince execs that kind of a spend and the benefits of something like that?
It's a good question. So this actually came from the top. It was something that was discussed in a group where through COVID, just like we've been talking about, there was a cross-functional team that was formed, and we really call it Our People Matters, and we meet weekly, and it does have representation from different groups. And then every other Friday, there is almost a management team, crisis management team. And one of the things we heard was disconnecting was becoming an issue that was highlighted actually in our 2020 engagement survey, that people are having a difficult time disconnecting. And we also knew that they were working so many more hours. And again, this was really geared towards those that were working from home, that honestly giving them that time frame was more to make sure they took that time for themselves, and it was blocked on the calendar as almost a thank you. And so I think it was understanding people had been in this, hyper way of working and working, beyond hours just due to the lack of being able to disconnect work and life. So that was not something that came up as a barrier for us. It was really truly acknowledging people aren't stopping right now, and we wanted to just build in that break. We did that every other Friday for a couple of months. And so then after Memorial Day, we have traditionally had, I'm going to call it Wellness Fridays, but it's not, but it's Summer Fridays in the US. And so we just transitioned from that to our normal Summer Fridays process. So it was really looked at as a thank you, and take time. We're going to put it on your calendar.
That is so impressive. I don't think people realize when you get that mental break from a day or a half a day, how much it does just for your overall productivity when you do come back to work. So that's very impressive. Kind of leaning into that, I want to move on to one of our last questions, which is, now that we've been on this journey of working from home for the last, I think, Courtney, you said 400 days, we're now going to be coming back to this new world, this new way of working, which could ultimately change again. And so I think the question becomes, how do we keep our workforce engaged? How do we get them excited to come back to work, excited for this new model? I'm going to turn it back to you, Courtney, if you don't mind. I know you've got some great ideas that you're doing with Colgate to really work on this element. Could you share those with the audience?
Definitely. And I think, with the hybrid work model, we know the virtual piece is not going to be leaving us. We know that will be part of the conversation. And one of the things we're realizing and we don't want to lose is the fact that over the last time that some of our workforce has been working from home full time, that you've been able to meet and connect with people you never would have if we were going into the office. And so how do we maintain that and keep people connecting in new and different ways? And so one of the things that was rolled out, and this was a great idea that actually came from our corporate communication officer and leader, in the sense of a coffee coalition. And collision, a coffee and connect. And we use Google products internally. And so there is the Google chat, and there is the opportunity to click on this bot and say, I want 15 minutes to talk with somebody over coffee, over tea. and automatically anyone else around the world that clicks that as well, you'll join in automatically into kind of just a quick connection. So that's something that I think will be here to stay. It's something that I think is really allowing organic discussions, those water cooler chats as we talk about it. The other thing we're doing is it is our well-being big month that we celebrate well-being and holistic well-being across the globe. And one thing we offer and something that will keep going are these virtual fitness and meditation classes. So we offer a variety of different classes, and they're offered globally at different times. And so people are actually coming together. We have a central calendar, so you can add them to your own calendar, overlay it over your meetings, unhide it. When you're ready and you see you have a little break to see if something's coming up. And it's been really great because people are now, instead of normally we would have it just at one site, you would go and do a class, we're now having people do a Zumba class with their colleagues around the world. So our thought is when we go back, can we hybrid that as well? Can we do some on-site and then broadcast that out to the broader audience? So those are a couple ideas that we're doing to keep the connection happening in this, new world.
Thank you, Courtney. Bethany, how about KBR? Could you share some ideas?
KBR has got a lot of different ideas based off where you work. And I would say that KBR supports almost anything that anybody wants to do, if it makes sense. From my manager's perspective, she is very, very supportive of all the employees, just as it goes all the way up. So from top down, I would say that we recognize that the employees are our most important asset. And what we do is provide a lot of activity. Right now, it's going to be mainly online. I told you that we have these various committees, and I'm seeing that more and more committees that are aligned around either a certain organization or a certain benefit or something of that nature where people can group together. There was one that was started with children with disabilities, where it was parents that could get together and communicate and find about resources. So there's a lot of different committees that are coming together. For me personally, I think sometimes people don't get thank you enough. We do that a lot in the office, and we do it with service awards. And so I'm trying, I told you about the cookies. One of the things that I had sent to people when they were having a really rough time, we were working on a project and it was hard. And I decided to go to Yeti and get a cup, and you can write on it, and it says, just in case you forget you're awesome, this is your reminder. And so now it's something that sits on their desk, and hopefully they see it every day because they are awesome and they do work very hard. And so trying to remember those things. The company certainly supports it in every chance they can. Like I said, the CEO is doing videos, the CEO is doing videos, our VP is. So everybody from the top down, while they don't have time to do it all the time, support from the top down doing something. So I think it's getting creative, and I'm going to let Shannon talk because I like one of hers a whole lot that I'm going to take.
Actually, go ahead, Shannon.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that, Bethany. Yes, we do a lot of different things to keep our employees engaged. One of the things is we have a break room on our Teams chat just for people to be able to informally chat and talk to each other about what they would normally talk about around the water cooler per se, and just share some of the weekend plans and things like that. People have really thought that to be really fun. We also have different pages in our platform that we utilize with Yammer where people can share pictures of their pets, maybe even their favorite recipes and pictures of their recipes that they cooked over the weekend. We have different pages for different types of topics that people can engage in. It's quite a little fun platform for us to be able to share. And then I think the one that Bethany was talking about was just sending people sticky notes virtually whenever somebody does a really great job. Normally how you would stop by somebody's desk and just put a little sticky note on their desk that just says great job on that presentation or whatever. Obviously those are little small tokens of thank you, and then maybe just a little bit of candy as well. So since we're in a virtual environment, it's nice to be able to do those types of things for employees. So.
Thank you. That's great to hear. It sounds like there's initiatives all the way from the top down within every aspect of the organization, which I know it's a lot of work to do those extra things, but people really value that and feel special when you do those things. We have about a couple minutes left. Just one other question that came in to Courtney and Bethany. Courtney, if you want to kick this off first, how do you address the issue of employees feeling the pressure to always be connected?
Yes, so as I mentioned, one of the biggest things that we are tackling is the ability to disconnect. And one of the ways that we're looking at this is really understanding, and I think I had mentioned it a little bit before, was this kind of sense of golden rules. So I think what's happening is the boundaries start to get blurred, and rightfully so, and especially in a global organization, it's hard to even turn that off. And so we have different golden rules for different groups within the organization. So we'll say to leaders, of course, whatever you can do to not send that email, right, that may be going out on Friday night, and working on ways to schedule and promoting the fact through Google, you can schedule the sending of an email. The meetings being 25 minutes to 50 minutes, making sure there's the break. In our signature boxes, having when was the last time you took a break? That's just in there to try to promote that. So again, we're really looking at ways to allow teams. So this is the area where teams will implement certain things, but our themes that are coming up, and these were actually developed by different regions, which I thought was interesting, but there were these common themes. And so what we're doing now is trying to say, it sounds like everyone is on board for this one rule, and trying to implement that more holistically to everyone. So it has been organic, but it has been something where it's been a struggle, but it's something we're trying to address and engage the workforce in a new way of how to work and how to meet.
I would mimic that. I think it's from the top. I know it's from the top down. And I can tell you, at least from my leader, it is, I expect you to unplug on the weekends. And if you need to go to the doctor, then go. You don't have to be at that meeting from 1 to 2. You can reschedule it, go to the doctor. So part of that agile workforce is the ability to manage whatever you need personally as well as doing work, but also then take the time that's set aside for you. We work 980s, so we have scheduled time to be at the office, and 980s is still what a lot of us are on. So we have every other Friday off anyway. Sometimes we work it, sometimes we don't, because it's an agile workforce. But from my leader, and then her leader, and then her leader, it just all the way up, there is a belief that, and it goes along with the mental health and well-being, that this corporate committee was set up and that we all participate on, and adding all these features. So they really, KBR is very much a fan of, we've got to somehow be able to do all of it, because if our mental well-being isn't good, then we're not going to be good. And again, our biggest asset is our employee, no matter where we are. So we need to take care of that, and that's part of it, taking time off.
Thank you, Bethany. This has been really fantastic. I mean, all of the questions and the way you responded has been, I'm sure, extremely helpful to our audience today. So I'd like to say thank you to our panelists for participating and for sharing all of your insights. I'd also like to thank the audience for attending as well. I know everybody's super busy and it's hard to kind of connect in and attend things like this. You'll actually receive a survey at the end of this webinar where you'll have an opportunity to add your comments. Any feedback you can share, either about what you heard today or the topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars, we would really open those up and love to get that response from you. Once again, thank you all for participating today. Stay safe and have a great day.
Thank you.